I thought he would be unfaithful to me, so I was unfaithful first, just in case, but I became the very thing I hated most. My father and my boyfriends showed me that all men are unfaithful. And when my boyfriend went away on a trip, I cheated on him just to level the playing field. Now, I have become the very thing I hated most. My name doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what they did to me, and what I did. Because sometimes, you aren't born bad, you are manufactured that way, built from disappointments, forged by the force of watching others lie while they smile, how they promise love while already having someone else on their mind. I grew up watching that movie on a loop, my dad cheating on my mom, my aunts crying over husbands who had hidden children, and my cousins swearing their boyfriends were different. Different. That word always made me laugh. My dad, every time he was caught, would say the same thing. It was a mistake, as if mistakes could last for years and have a first and last name. I would watch him, hidden behind the hallway wall, seeing my mother cry and him swearing he was going to change. He never changed, he just learned to lie better. I suppose that's where I learned, too. I learned not to trust, to see all men as a more polished version of the same broken mold. Then I grew up and thought that adult love would be different, but it wasn't. My first boyfriend swore eternal fidelity to me and I found him with another woman in our bed. He didn't even bother to deny it. It meant nothing, he told me. Another recycled phrase. I laughed. It was the last time I cried for a man. From then on, I learned to harden myself. To think that men are like gravity, sooner or later, they all fall. It doesn't matter how high they swear they are. And then Mario appeared. He was so different it irritated me. I don't know how to explain it. He looked me in the eyes. He listened to every word that came out of my mouth. He would ask me how I was without expecting me to just say, fine. He had this calm in his voice that makes you think the world isn't as cruel as it seems. And that scared me, because if I've learned anything in this life, it's that the men who seem good are the ones who know how to pretend the best. I looked for flaws in him like someone searching for cracks in a new wall. I waited for the moment when a lie, a gesture, a look out of place would slip out, but I couldn't find one, and that was worse. It made me nervous, made me feel exposed. He would tell me, not all of us are the same. And I felt like laughing, because of course they were all the same, just that some were better at hiding it. Sometimes I would stay awake at night, watching him sleep so peacefully, so oblivious to the storm brewing in my head. I wondered if he dreamed of another woman, if he thought about someone else. The mistrust wasn't a decision, it was an automatic reaction, a conditioned reflex from years of others' betrayal. If he was late, my mind would invent a complete catalog of possibilities, a date, a dinner, a woman. But Mario gave me no reason, he would let me know, show me messages, and speak to me with a transparency that I found unbearable. He would tell me he loved me, and he said it with his eyes, not just his mouth. And still, I couldn't believe him. Doubt was my only form of defense, because if I let my guard down, if I let him all the way in, he would break me. And I no longer had the pieces to glue myself back together. One day he told me he had to go on a work trip for 3 months. 3 months was too long. I stayed silent, as if I had just received news of a death. At first, I begged him not to go. I told him he could delegate, that it wasn't necessary, that work wasn't everything, but the truth was different. I didn't want to lose control. I didn't want him to be far away, where I couldn't see him, where my fears couldn't be confirmed or denied. He hugged me with that tenderness that disarmed me. I have to do this. I can't say no, and I will come back. I promise you, he said. And I thought, that's exactly what my father said before he didn't come home one night. So I shrank back, faked a smile, and replied, do what you have to do, Mario. It's not my place to stop you. Inside, I was breaking, but I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me weak. The day he left, I watched him walk away with his suitcase in hand, and I could have sworn he was carrying more than just clothes in it. In my head, he was also carrying a list of future lovers, secret messages, false promises. It was only a matter of time. Everyone eventually shows who they are. During the first few nights, I told myself I didn't care, that if he was going to cheat on me, I'd rather he did it far away, where I wouldn't have to pretend to believe his excuses. Yet, in the deepest part of me, I was lying. Every second mattered. I checked his online status, his posts, looking for signs that would confirm my suspicions. Every photo, every silence was a threat. My friends told me I should trust him, that not all men were the same, but my friends had also cried over men who had betrayed them. What did they know? I wasn't naive, I saw the world as it was, not as they wanted to paint it. And the more days that passed, the more convinced I became that Mario was no exception. It was only a matter of time before his mask fell. One night, as I watched the city's reflection from my window, I thought that maybe I was the one who no longer knew how to distinguish between love and fear, but I quickly dismissed the idea. It wasn't fear, it was prudence. It was emotional intelligence, I told myself. Because if the story always ends the same way, why expect a different ending? I was left alone in that large apartment that he paid for. Too big, too silent. Every room echoed his voice, and every object seemed to watch me, a reminder of what was missing. The cold returned, denser than ever. The kind of cold you can't fight with blankets, but with distractions. So I found one. I joined a gym, not because I wanted to look better, but because I needed to not think. I needed the sweat to replace the tears I wouldn't allow myself to shed. I wanted to feel something other than the anxiety of waiting for his messages, his calls, his, I miss yous. And sometimes they came. Sometimes they didn't. In the silences, my head fabricated stories, women in hotels, laughter that wasn't mine, promises dissolving between someone else's sheets. And then Roberto appeared. I didn't look for him. He was just there, as if the universe had placed him in front of me just when I needed a reason to distract myself from my thoughts. Roberto was different, but not in the way Mario was. Mario looked at me with love, Roberto looked at me with desire. Mario gave me calm, Roberto gave me back the adrenaline. It was amusing. He had a smile he knew how to use like a weapon, and he spoke to me without measuring every word, without that weight of commitment that suffocated me. With him, I didn't have to pretend I trusted him or believed in forever. With him, everything was light, ephemeral, simple. We started by talking about silly things, workout routines, TV shows, music. Then the conversations grew longer, and the flirting became inevitable. I told myself it was nothing, that it was harmless, but every time Roberto made me laugh, I felt a jolt of relief in my chest, as if for a moment the fear of Mario or of losing him disappeared. And when he looked at me that way, the way that made me feel desired but not judged, a part of me woke up, the part that had been dormant for months under the weight of suspicion. I realized I was attracted to Roberto and, of course, I started to justify it. Mario is probably doing the same thing, I repeated to myself as I ran on the treadmill, headphones on, heart racing. This isn't betrayal, it's balance. A preemptive strike. It's fair. It was twisted logic. I knew it, but it worked. It made me feel in control. When Roberto invited me to his place, I went without thinking too much. I didn't even stop to look at my reflection in the mirror before leaving. I just put on some perfume, some lipstick, and went. In the end, we had sex. There was no romance, no candles, no soft music, just bodies seeking refuge in each other's warmth. And when it was over, I felt no remorse. I got dressed without rushing while Roberto offered me wine and an easy smile. And I thought, if Mario is cheating on me over there, at least I'm not here waiting like an idiot. I know how to play this game, too. I was leveling the score. The following days were strangely calm. I started sleeping well again, eating, laughing. Roberto became a comfortable, almost therapeutic routine. There were no promises, no plans, no, I love yous, just an exchange of needs. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was losing. 2.5 months passed like that, flying by until I looked at the calendar and saw the date of Mario's return. 2 weeks. Only 2 weeks left. Panic hit me all at once, like a bucket of cold water. Suddenly, all my justifications crumbled. The nights with Roberto became uncomfortable, and every message from him sounded increasingly invasive. I had to stop it. I had to stop myself. So I met him one afternoon at our usual cafe and told him what I had decided. We can't see each other anymore. Mario is coming back soon. Roberto looked at me, confused at first, and then let out a short, incredulous laugh. So what? It's not like you're his. I didn't answer, just picked up my bag and left. I thought that would be enough. I thought the closure was enough to erase everything. But days later, Roberto showed up at the apartment. I don't know how he got the address. Maybe I mentioned it once without thinking. Maybe he followed me. He knocked on the door insistently, calling my name, and I opened it. I don't know why I did it, maybe out of fear, maybe out of habit, maybe because deep down I didn't want the story to end so easily. We stood face to face, and everything I had tried to bury came back to the surface. The tension, the desire, the guilt hidden under a layer of denial. And when he touched me, I didn't stop him. It was fast, impulsive, almost violent, as if we both knew it was the last time. And right when we were in the middle of it all, I heard the sound. A click, fine and precise. The sound of a key turning in the lock. The world stopped. I pulled away from Roberto abruptly. For a second, I thought I was imagining it, that it was another of my paranoid nightmares, but it wasn't. The door opened, and there was Mario. I saw him standing there in the doorway, suitcase in hand, his gaze fixed on us. On me, on what was left of me. For a moment, I didn't even breathe. It was as if the air refused to enter my lungs. The silence lasted only a blink, but it was the heaviest of my life. I sat up sharply, pulling the sheet to cover myself, while Mario's face shifted from confusion to an expression I had never seen before, something between disgust and desolation. I felt my soul leaving my body. "What are you doing here?" I yelled, with a mix of fear and rage. An absurd, defensive rage, the kind you use when you don't know how to face what you've just destroyed. "You said you'd be back in 2 weeks." He didn't answer, just took a step forward, still holding the suitcase, and looked at me as if trying to understand if what he was seeing was real. Roberto, beside me, had scrambled up awkwardly, trying to put on his pants, tripping over the rug. Mario barely glanced at him. His breathing was heavy, restrained, and his hands were trembling in a way that was terrifying. The first punch was sharp, brutal, straight to Roberto's face. The sound froze my blood. I screamed, trying to separate them, but it was useless. The two struggled, stumbling over furniture, the sound of blows mixed with insults that cut the air like knives. I felt the heat, the adrenaline, the absolute fear that everything was spiraling out of control. "Stop, Mario, please, stop." I screamed, pushing him, crying without knowing if I wanted him to stop or to punish me too. When I finally managed to get between them, Roberto had already slipped out the door, his face bloodied and his clothes half on. He left without a word, and I was left trembling in the middle of the living room, wrapped in a sheet, looking at Mario as if he were a stranger. He stood there, chest heaving, his gaze fixed on me. He said nothing at first, and that was the worst part. That silence held more pain than any scream. When he finally spoke, his voice was broken and weak, as if the air was too heavy for him. "I came back early," he said slowly. "I finished everything. I closed the deal sooner than expected. I missed you. I wanted to surprise you, to have 2 more weeks with you. And this is what I find." Each word was a heavy blow. I didn't know how to react. I stared at him, paralyzed, feeling cold sweat run down my back. My mind desperately searched for a way out, an explanation, something to make me less guilty. But there was nothing, only the reality. I had done it, and now I had to pay the price. "Don't you dare act so shameless," I shouted with a voice I didn't even recognize. It was an empty, furious voice, the kind born from wounded pride. "You probably slept with other women over there. All men are the same." He laughed. But it wasn't a human laugh. It was dry, hollow, filled with contempt. "All the same," he repeated, his eyes shining with contained fury. "No, it's not my fault that the men in your life have been trash." He took a step toward me, and his voice broke for the first time. "I do have principles. I do love for real, and I don't cheat on the person I love." I felt like I was being dismantled from the inside. It was as if each word tore a piece of flesh from me. I tried to answer, but my throat wouldn't work. Mario took a deep breath, trying to calm himself, and then came the sentence that killed me. "Do you know why I took that job? Why I endured those 3 months of hard work? It wasn't just a job, it was the future, our future." His gaze drifted for a moment, as if he were talking to a version of me that no longer existed. To leave the past behind and go live in England. I secured a deal that would change our lives. I had a dream, a house, a new opportunity, and you just flushed it all down the toilet. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. The only thing that came out of me was a mumbled, "I'm so stupid." I took a step closer, reaching for his hand, but he pulled away as if he'd been touched by fire. "Get dressed and get out of my house." "We're done," he said in a cold, final voice that allowed no reply. "Mario, please," I murmured, the tears choking me. "This isn't what it looks like." It meant nothing. "Not what it looks like," he interrupted with a bitter laugh. "Don't take me for an idiot." I tried to explain, to tell him I was scared, that I loved him, that it had all been a mistake born from my paranoia, but he was no longer listening. He walked to the window, opened the curtains, and stared at the street as if I weren't there. "I gave you everything," he said in a low voice, without looking at me. "I was patient with you, careful. I showed you that not all of us are the same. But you needed to be right. You needed your victim story to stay alive. And of course, if I wasn't going to be the cheater, you would be. All your relationships end because of infidelity." I wanted to touch him, to hold him, to stop the collapse, but there was nothing that could save me. Mario turned slowly and pointed to the door. "Leave before I regret not losing control." And so he did it. He literally threw me out. He took my keys, my cards, everything. He left me with only the clothes on my back, barefoot, with my heart shattered to dust. The cold street air hit my face like a slap. I walked aimlessly, not knowing where to go, my head filled with voices that wouldn't shut up. I spent the night at a friend's house, crying until I fell asleep, wishing I could wake up in another life. For days and weeks, I looked for him. I wrote to him, I called him, I went to his office. He never answered. It was as if I had been erased. Until more than a month later, one afternoon while scrolling through social media, I saw him. Mario was in England. A single photo said it all. He was standing in front of a cafe with a new jacket, a peaceful smile, and that look he used to have when we talked about the future. It hurt so much I had to close my phone. I couldn't bear the thought that I had lost him, not because of something he did, but because of something I caused. The weeks passed, and regret became a permanent shadow. It was no longer the cold of mistrust that accompanied me. It was another, crueler cold, the cold of remorse. Because when you lose something because of someone else, it hurts, but when you lose it because of yourself, there is no possible refuge. I repeated the same phrases to myself 1,000 times. Not all men are the same. Not all of them lie. Not all of them cheat. But it was too late. Mario didn't betray me. It was I who didn't know how to believe. I destroyed him. I turned love into suspicion, tenderness into a threat, and trust into ruin. And the worst part is that in the end, my own prophecy came true, not because it was true, but because I made it happen. They say the law of gravity is immutable. Everything that goes up must come down. And I, with my pride, with my fears and my old wounds, thought I could defy it. But no. I became the very thing I hated so much, me father, the man who destroyed my mother's life. And now, all that's left for me is to carry this guilt.